Thank you, Gwen. I appreciate that. Hi, everybody. David Smith, and I am an OIT director here at the state. I'm here with Jamie, who has helped us really move a pilot. This is mainly about Gemini. I'm not going to cover everything AI. I don't think anyone could do that in 40 minutes. Um, but we are going to talk about what we've done at the state to introduce responsible use of AI to all the agencies at the in the executive branch, and how we actually brought Gemini to light. So where we started was we knew that everyone was using or was going to be using Gen AI, right? In November of 2022, ChatGPT came onto the playing field. They had 100 million users in a couple of weeks, and that was growing rapidly. And about a year ago, we had been looking at many different things about Gen AI, and we decided that we wanted to come forth with a product, because if we didn't come forth with a product, people were going to be using it anyway, and there's danger in people actually using applications that are not, part of your enterprise. And so that's why we were like, what are we actually going to move forward with? So we decided on Google Gemini. I'll get more into that. And we would do a pilot with people across the state. We actually put together, or I should say, solicited people from across all the agencies. So we had 150 pilot testers across 18 agencies. Jamie, was it 18? I think 18, 19, something like that. And so we had good representation across the entire state in actually to do this. And what we wanted to do was create literacy in our pilot participants, right? This is how we were going to mitigate risk. Just about any technology, but Gen AI, I think a primary risk is the use. It's not the technology, right? You can put all the security you want around something, but if someone was to grab PII and email it out, email just became a risk, regardless of how secure it is, right? So that was where that this was the basis of where we actually went forward to what we wanted to do. So then we had to identify our needs, right? We needed a tool. Um, we decided that we wanted people to attest to how they would be using this. We had to put training together. We wanted to track data so that we actually could get answers at the end of all this pilot. And then we had to have comms actually help us. We have multiple teams that were involved in this, right? And we'll talk about those later. But we needed comms there to help us actually talk to pilot testers throughout the entire process, make sure they understood where we were, what we were doing, what they could not do, and how we actually made sure we brought them in to all the training we put together and the conversations that we moved forward with. So the tool was Gemini, and it was a pretty easy decision because, well, we already are standardized on the Google Suite. Some people have 365 as well, but basically we're on the Google Suite. Every single person that comes into the state as an employee gets a Google Gmail, Docs, Sheets, Slides, Drive, etc. So we thought that was the best place to start. We didn't actually do a comparison. The tool made sense for our enterprise.
David, I would add that it would be what we did could apply really to any tool. So
Right.
I would say the framework could have applied to any tool. It was just Gemini made the most sense in Colorado.
Right. So really what we're talking about here is a productivity suite, right? When we're talking about a productivity brand. Um, but as I said, because of our standardization, that's what we were. So the first thing that was on that other list was the attestation. This is our attestation. Not going to go through all of these. I will call out some of them are very common sense. Don't break the law. The important thing here, that I think is different than using other technology is you'll see in a couple of them human review, human oversight. These are some of the that it's that phrase that Jamie and I mean, in every training and I'm talking about dozens of training to date, and Jamie's actually still leading these every week, is human in the loop, or as a CIO likes to say, human at the helm, has to be involved in that, right? Nobody should ever copy and paste Gen AI and put that out as something. You are ultimately responsible for the content that you actually use from generative AI. So if you use it to make an email and you send that email, you sent it. Gen AI didn't send it, right? So you should be reviewing all these, and we really drive that home through the attestation and the training. And this is the end of the attestation where they actually have to sign. So in order to get provisioned, uh, you know, uh, 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 from OIT, the attestation is one thing that you have to do. From a training standpoint, we had extensive training. I think we really, really blew this out of the water. Um, First, we started with InnovateUS, which is why we're here today, right? They had come out, they have several now, but I think it was the first one they came out with. It was the only one when we first started. And Jamie took it, I took it, a couple other people took it that was on the team, for the AI team, and we all really liked it. And we thought, you know what, this is a great basis to start it on. So everybody in the pilot had to take the class, which I talk about the. I always get the actual title wrong, so I'm not going to say it until I get to the slide with the title on it. Um, Second thing is, led by Jamie, we put together virtual Gen AI learning sessions. And each one of these was based on something like fairness and bias, security and privacy, accountability and transparency. We wrapped them around that, but we made them much more consumable for a range of people, because we'd have people that were really new and we'd have some people that were a little bit more sophisticated, but these were about responsible use. They weren't as technical, although we did talk about this is how you do this in Gemini, but it was really about responsible use. And that's what those were. And that's what they continue to be. We'll talk about the training in a little more specific later. Then we also had virtual Gemini office hours. And these were great because we had that training, but the office hours tended to be more sophisticated conversations, in my opinion, because what you had were people that were pushing the ticket, trying to figure things out, running into problems, or actually helping others. And this is where we saw our pilot testers become our pilot masters, right? Jamie and I started out as trainers, but after a while, we started depending on a lot of the pilot people that actually came forth. And I think one of the important things to remember is we went cross agency. So we had agencies represented everywhere. Because the way I look at these users, there's two parts to them. The one is the agency, right? If I'm in a health portfolio, or if I'm in revenue, or if I'm in natural resources, I have a different view of the world, right? I may know the state, but I have a different view. And then secondarily, I have a position inside there. So I have HR people from each of those agencies. I have a finance person from each of those agencies. And those two things gave us personas that we didn't have to create. They were in the office hours. And so a person might speak about HR, and that would work for everybody. Or a person may talk about just their agency that they were trying to solve a problem for, but it still might cross over, but you got to see into each other. So there was this community that we created through this pilot test, which I don't think that was an intent, but I think we created a great community. Jamie, don't you agree? And then the last thing is the on-demand training via internal website. We created a website for people that they could just go there, that were like prompt examples, just responsible AI videos, things like that, so that they go there and look at that on their own time if they couldn't make the meetings. By the way, the virtual Gen AI learning sessions and the office hours were 3 times a week each. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday mornings, we did the sessions. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday afternoons, we did the office hours. We've repeated the same one each week. Well, for the sessions, the office hours obviously were ad hoc. Um, but that gave everyone an opportunity to go to every single lesson, right? They had three opportunities to get there. And we wanted to make sure that they were actually getting there. Because in the pilot, the two rules that we had about the number one, the training, and number two, the lessons, you could get thrown out if you actually weren't doing those. You had a couple of weeks to do the training, the video training from InnovateUS, and then you had to show up for the other lessons. If you weren't, we could drop you out of the pilot. We didn't have to drop that many. Once people had Gen AI, they were not going anywhere. But we had to drop a couple, and then we just brought other people in. So we actually had more than 150 pilot testers, but only 150 at any one time. Oh, wrong way. So for each uh, uh, pilot person, they had to actually take surveys. And this was also another restriction of they had to do 3 a week in order to actually stay inside the pilot. And we asked a myriad of questions, some that we're going to talk about, but it started out with, they could let us know if they had an accessibility issue, which was great. I think we had, what was the percentage of that, Jamie?
About 20%, 18 to
20%.
20%
Okay.
across all types of, yeah.
Okay, identified with that. So we got that, but we asked, were you more creative? Were you more productive? Did you save time? Did you see a fairness or bias issue? Did you see a security issue? So we got all this data from over 2,000 use cases. So what we have is just fantastic on actually what we found out. We'll show you some of those in a minute. And then from a communications plan, we had that TechU page that we talked about with facts, training, and resources. And this is, oh, actually, this is what we're putting out now, isn't it? Okay, sorry, I was off a slide. This is what we're doing now with the communications plan as we roll it out. We have the TechU Gemini Advanced page, which I talked about, that has facts, training, and resources, so a ton of more information. The comms team actually put together a Gemini Advanced flyer for the agencies. Oh, Colorado has, that each agency makes a lot of decisions on their own. We support them from a technology perspective, but they can do, they can do things slightly different at each one. So we provide them with the advanced flyer where they can actually change that content to some degree, but we give them the basics of what they need in there. Gemini Advanced Toolkit, which has a ton of other information of how they can actually roll it out and the things they have to think about and move forward with. And then the last thing was a decision-making rubric, which we put together. Again, they may change that, right? With ours, you have to take the InnovateUS training. You have to sign the attestation. That's from like a state level. The agency may say, well, we're requiring a second training or some other process before they actually approve someone to come in. And they are approving them one person at a time. They can do it that way. They can give us a bulk of people and say, we're going to approve all of these people, or they can say, we're going to approve one at a time.
One thing I'd say about the communications, that last slide, David, is that the great thing about the pilot was we were able to really determine what was going to be needed from a statewide perspective. So with communications, we were able to tell that these are the questions the pilot people are asking. And because they're representative of all state agencies, these are most likely the questions everyone will be asking if we do this statewide. So that was really helpful.
It's a good point, and that's true of almost everything we're going to say. We learned so much from the pilot that I we're going to talk about the rollout. I think we've been very successful because the pilot, it's not like it ran perfectly. I think we had some stumbling blocks, and we overcame them, moved forward, and learned a lot along the way. So as I said, 2,000 use cases. And what we found, the 4 top things: productivity, creativity, obviously the literacy of our users. Last one I'm going to ask you, Jamie, to talk about, because I love all the stories and Jamie remembers better ones than I do. I remember them, but the accessibility, the human impact that actually this had. So take that over, Jamie.
Yeah, we were expecting productivity and creativity improvements with the pilot, but we weren't expecting the incredible effect this had on the people that work for the state. So about 20% of people identified as either having some type of a disability, or also we had a very big representation of neurodivergence in the pilot, which we didn't know going into it. But over 70% of all of the participants said that they were more confident, they were more empowered in their work, that they felt more socially connected to their colleagues because of how this technology allowed them to become better at communicating. So that was amazing. We also had a visually impaired user that said because of the way that the generative AI was able to do things like alt text, there was an image of an ocean that she said, I almost felt like I could see it. People were saying that they were waking up finding a confidence they didn't know they had lost. It was just amazing. We were getting so much feedback about the human impact.
Yeah, we were so excited about the accessibility piece. I mean, we did not see the impact that that one thing was going to have. Obviously, we asked the question early on in our survey because we thought that would be important to know. We had no idea what we were going to learn, and what we learned was it was both incredibly valuable, but it was. These stories were incredibly heartwarming, like the one Jamie just said as well. It was just really great to hear people communicate about what it actually did to help them. So here are the numbers. I'm not going to go through all of them, but 75% of people said they were more creative, which is always useful at work. I wasn't useless. But I do want to point you down to the last bullet on the left side. 70% of users reported feeling more confident in their abilities. That was part of what Jamie was actually saying, but it wasn't just for people with adaptability or accessibility needs. That was 70%, right? Of people were actually saying that it actually made them better at work, made them feel better to do their work, and feeling better to do your work. I think we can intuit that you are doing better work if you're actually feeling that way. And on the right side, the second bullet, 73% focused on higher priority work. I think this is so important because we do talk about saving time, and that's great. And there is some concern about, is it going to replace, some jobs out there over time? What I think we found with the second bullet, 73% focused on higher priority work. We were actually moving a lot of mundane tasks. I don't know anyone at the state of Colorado that says, oh, yeah, I have all the time in the world. I'm not that busy. We're all busy. We all feel overwhelmed. If I can reduce my mundane tasks and actually find ways to do those further, I can now concentrate on the valuable work that I'm trying to get done for our constituency. And I love that 73% focused on higher priority work. I just think it's such an important one. They're all important, um, but I wanted to actually call those two out. So this was a survey that we took before of people's literacy before about generative AI. As you can see, it's spread all over the place. And the lowest is all the way on the 10, right? We only had 2% that said, yeah, I'm comfortable with this. It's fine. Let's move on. That was probably Jamie. She was probably the 2% there. and then and then it goes, if you look 5 and down, is more than half. They're all in the bottom half there. And the second one is after. So the pilot was about 90 days. Um, and that was the difference that we brought everyone, those 150 people from one place to another, right? A completely different view of the world of where they actually were after we went through that 90 days, the training, the office hours, and all the literacy work that we did with them. And as I said, a lot of them training each other, sometimes inside their agency, sometimes cross agency, really changed the way that our footprint was with that 150 people, but it was a model for moving forward. So what are we going to do now? So we have a Gen AI page. Actually, we have one Gen AI page that's public. If you go to, I think it's Colorado oit.colorado.gov/AI. I think that's what it is, which is just a kind of our general public page. But internally, we obviously have training in TechU. TechU is a place that we put training for all kinds of enterprise applications. We have a Google section, one of our biggest ones in Gemini is inside there for people actually working with that. And then we are continuing the training. We have two types of training. I think we go through those in the next slide. The first thing that everyone has to do in order to get a license at the state, as I said, they have to take this training from InnovateUS. And there's the title, Responsible AI for Public Professionals Using Generative AI at Work. It's a long title. I always forget it. But that's the one that we said you have to take this, about a 2-hour course if you kind of blow through it. But I think everybody takes a little longer. If you do the exercises, it's a lot of fun. It takes a little longer than that. It's really good training about the basic responsible use of AI. So we have people do that first. We worked with InnovateUS to actually customize it. It's branded inside our LMS. We have an introductory video. We have the attestation that we talked about right in the video that they click through. So we know they get through it. We get their certificate so that we know before we actually provision them that they have gone through the training in addition to some other requirements their agency requires. These are the sessions that we're doing. Don't tell my secrets about privacy and data. AI is an intern, human in the loop, which is something we say in everything, but that one is actually dedicated to what human in the loop actually means. Summarizing policy. And then we have Are my prompts queryable? That was a great one, right? Because a lot of people are concerned about actually how this works and how we retain information in Gen AI. It's an important subject regardless of the product that you actually choose. Um, then human impact, accessibility in Gen AI, which is another great one. Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, but that came from the pilot, what we learned, right? I mean, you put it together. It's a great lesson, actually, that Jamie put together about how it actually affects in the accessibility realm. And then the last one is tips and tricks, right? That's really focused on prompting and what we can do there. And
And
as
with
you
this,
see,
we're mirroring what we did in the pilot. So we're offering this 4 times a week, right, David? We've got
yeah,
two Wednesdays and Thursdays. We're offering it 4 times a week, and it's been going on for 3 weeks now. And we've had 100 people a day without even trying really to get people there, um, which has been pretty amazing. Yeah.
right. And we're going to see how we continue that. We're actually because just like in the pilot, we're learning things, and these products are changing. Right. I think everyone knows, right? We see a press release every week. Gemini went to this version and ChatGPT just released that version and China just released their version, right? And people are all, looking at that and so we have to continue this training and we have to continue to let it evolve with us as we move through this journey. And then we have Gemini specific training because we are on the Google Suite. If whatever product you actually choose, you want to actually, oh, sorry, you want to actually think about that and make sure that our Google team already did training on a regular basis for Drive, Docs, Sheets, Slides, etc. They've added Gemini, but they've also incorporated Gemini because it touches all those into all their training moving forward this year. And they'll continue the same thing. New things are being released all the time. And we're going to have to keep updating that training until, this is going to become ubiquitous and everybody's going to understand it probably sometime in the future, but not this year. So our process for moving it forward. Now, agency by agency, this may change a little bit, right? But so we work out a formal request process with the agency, the way that they want to bring them to OIT to be provisioned. Everybody is required the training that we talked about, the video training and the attestation. That's required for everyone at the state. Agencies can add on to that if they want. And what we have for them, if they want to add on, they have the optional learning sessions, which Jamie leads, as we talked about. And an agency can say, nope, you have to take all of those lessons before we're going to let you have Gemini. That's up to them. We just require that initial training and the attestation so we know that people are thinking about it before they get it. And then there's optional tool specific training. The Google Gemini, as I said, is now incorporated into our general productivity training. The communications toolkit, which we talked about earlier, that's provided by our comms team that puts together everything for an agency to actually easily be able to customize and get it out to their employees to actually do what they need. And then some agencies are actually looking at redoing the pilot inside their agency, which we could support from OIT. We work that out on a case by case basis. But if they're more comfortable with saying, no, we want to go through a whole pilot again with our employees, we can actually do that as well. So we're supporting that moving forward.
This is one of my favorite slides. Can I talk about this one, David?
Go for it.
especially in government. We talk about so much about team silos that there can be an issue with communication between teams. And I feel like this whole rollout from the pilot all the way to the rollout of Gemini has been incredible because there have not been team silos. This is just a slide that shows all of the different divisions within the Office of Information Technology that all played a part in this. And it was just amazing. I don't even actually have words to put around it, but it was life changing in a way for me to see how well this happened.
Yeah, and I want to, I want to embellish on that, right? So first of all, we had to engage the agencies. As I said, we got every executive agency to give us one or more people to actually pilot, which was fantastic. To get that diversity across our pilot team was really important, so we actually saw how it affected each agency. And then the office hours helped us, because of that, have conversations about privacy and how that would affect an individual agency, which could give another agency what they had to think about, and maybe policies that they had to put on top of the OIT state policy for AI to begin with. I'm from the chief customer office, so I was representative there. We worry about actually the agencies. We're the front door to all the agencies in anything OIT related. So we had our OITDs. There's an ITD like myself for every agency in the executive branch, and they need to know actually what we're doing and how we're getting there, so they can help our communications from the comms team that's coming through and making sure that that's actually getting to the right people and getting the real message across. Bottom left, Chief Information Security Office, obviously, you can't roll out something like this without CISO, right? They had to look at what we were doing. They had to look at Gemini and how actually it interacts with the rest of the Google productivity suite, and how it actually fits into our agreement with them in order to make sure that we were being safe. And of course, privacy falls under there too. So they were a big part of those conversations. On the bottom right, the chief data office is actually the executive sponsor of everything AI in Colorado. So Amy Bika, who runs the CDO, obviously, helped her team, and Jamie's pretty much on her team, drive the strategy, and the operation of what we actually be doing going forward. The service management office on the right, you may not think of this, but you should think of this early on. It's going to cost something, right? You're going to have to ultimately get licenses. As we know, there's been a lot of talk of the two major suites, 365 and Gemini, of, oh, now it's included. Well, it's not free, it's included, not the same thing. And so you have to work with your contracts. Our SMO actually does the heavy lifting there of working with our vendors to make sure we understand what we're getting, what it's costing, and then how we will actually make sure that that budget is available to actually do the things that we want to do and get it in the hands of the people who are going to need it. And last but not least, top right, the Google team. So the Google team has been, they were inserted with us from day one. We couldn't do it without them. They provision everybody, but they don't just provision anyone. They were, our basically our experts on the productivity suite to begin with. And, just like everyone else, they had to learn with us of this new feature. Right. They know docs, sheets, and slides and everything like that. But they actually had to make sure that they were walking side by side with us through this entire process to make sure that we could train it right, deliver it right, maintain it correctly, not just provision, but deprovision. We have to worry about that, right? If we need to do that. So they had a lot of work they had to do. And then they had to retool their training, as I said before, for their entire year to make sure that they were addressing this. So we make sure that people are using the productivity suite, responsibly and with value. Anything else on this, Jamie? I think that's the last slide. So Jamie, I know I dominated this. You have so much to say, and everything you say, in my opinion, is really important. Do you have anything to add? Did I miss anything?
No, I think you did a fantastic job. I think if there's questions, this is just a great time to go into questions.
Okay, super.
There are already a lot of questions into the chat. So maybe I can, I mean, I will read the last one, and then I will check for the others. But for all the participants, please feel free to drop your questions and we will go through all of them. So I have a question from Natalie that says, did you train Gemini or create any custom models or just use it out of the box?
Okay, so and I do want you to add to this, Jamie, but first I want to say, so Gemini, when I say Gemini, and this is a problem, right? Because the brand Gemini is pretty big. It's an umbrella. We're talking about Gemini Advanced for the productivity suite, the Google suite. So that is kind of an out of the box product. You have the ability to provision or not provision somebody, but generally it just works inside that suite. It interacts with docs, sheets, slides, Drive, and it does not train the public LLM, right? So you're inside your own tenant in the enterprise version.